This video topic was suggested by Instagram follower Trotty Pursuits on a story post. If you don't follow Starship reviews on Instagram, then consider doing so, as I post short stories and ship reviews there every day, and I also take requests. Shameless plug out of the way, I want to thank Trotty Pursuits for their idea, and also say that I am definitely going to make a video about a fight between 1 D-Deridex-sized Miranda or 10 Miranda-sized D-Deridex class ships. Now, if you want the short answer without explanation, then the Galor wins in a majority of battles against a lone Miranda, though the fight is not as one-sided as you may at first assume, and 2 or 3 ships stand a decent chance of winning in a fight. Additional vessels just make the fight more one-sided. Now, to the one viewer still watching now that I've spoiled my own video, I will just say that because we just don't know all that much hard data about the respective ships, there will be some major assumptions and my own headcanon going into this video. Were the title of this video Who Would Win? A Fletcher-class destroyer versus the battleship Yamato, the outcome would be much more certain and less up for debate. But this is Trek, and Trek is nothing if not inconsistent, and as a result, every fan has their own ideas. This video is not definitive. I'm not a Star Trek writer, and what I say has no official say. If you reach a different conclusion, or the same conclusion for different reasons, then let me know why or how you think the battle would go differently. With all those out of the way, I have doubtlessly driven away even that lone viewer, so now that I'm alone, let's get started with a description of the Miranda class. Seeing service starting in the 2270s and entering widespread use by the 2280s, the Miranda class was initially intended as a light cruiser counterpart to the then cutting-edge refit Constitution class of heavy cruisers. The ship was somewhat more combat-focused than preceding designs of small cruisers which had served with Starfleet in the past. The vessels mounted a similar number of phaser banks to the larger Constitution class, though I would guess they would be smaller in size and power outfit than those fitted aboard larger ships. Many Miranda-class ships also featured phaser cannon at the roots of the torpedo pod, which were quite powerful for the time. The ship had impressive shielding for the period and could take quite a beating while remaining in action, and its speed and agility in the period were good. Now, of course, by the time of the Dominion War, 80-plus years after their introduction, the Miranda had fallen behind the curve somewhat of modern technology. Pushing a century old, some ships were so old that they could now only be used as spare parts, while most were relegated to serving as frigates, destroyers, scouts, science ships, transports, medical vessels, and school ships. Refits had kept the ships broadly competitive, but the increasing size and power of newer ships still meant they were unable to go toe against any modern ships in their original light cruiser category. In fact, it seems that by the 2360s, Starfleet was phasing out the remaining Miranda-class ships, withdrawing them from combat missions and re-rolling them in support roles for the fleet. But the dual threats of the Borg Collective and the Dominion meant that this changed, and many ships would go on to serve in frontline roles during the Dominion War, with those used in fleet actions being heavily automated to allow mere skeleton crews to command the ships. In short, by the time our matchup takes place, around the start of the Dominion War, the Miranda is a widely variable design serving in a variety of roles and variants. We are looking at the frigate version of the ship, though, which is somewhat behind the norm in terms of warp speed and shield strength, but still comparable in weapons firepower to more modern vessels. Obviously, we aren't pitting a transport version of the Miranda against a Galor, as that would be unusually cruel to the Starfleet ship. Now that we know one half of our matchup, let's look next at, well, the other half, the Cardassian Galor class cruiser. Now, the Galor is a general-purpose medium cruiser design, first entering service with the Cardassian Union in the 2350s during the latter stages of its border conflicts with the Federation. The ship comes in 3 major variants: an early model, distinguished by its blue deflector, a Mark II, which has a red deflector and improved armament and shielding, and a Mark III, which was the model commonly in use by the time of the Dominion War. Each of these three marks of the ship feature similar levels of firepower, though the Mark II and III have better reactors and emitters, enabling them to fire their beam weapons more rapidly. Alongside the Hideki-class scouts, the Galor is the mainstay and most powerful ship available to most of the Union's orders, analogous to fleets, the one exception being the Keldon-class battleship, which is itself a heavily modified Galor Mark II hull. Due to the scarce resources and limited industry of Cardassian space, the Galor has to be able to perform multiple roles, with lone Galors being employed as patrol and scout ships, while larger formations of the vessels are used as powerful task forces to engage enemy forces. The idea being that, by standardizing on as small a number of designs as possible, the Union will be able to build larger numbers of individual ships than it otherwise would. The Union also lags behind the Federation somewhat in terms of its technological base, with a Galor being less advanced than something like the Intrepid class of fast cruiser. In fact, the Galor is more comparable to the much older Excelsior class in combat capability than the Federation's more modern cruiser lineup. And well, yes, it can still likely overpower a lone Miranda class. The battle will not be as one-sided as you may initially think. Now that we know what our two opposing vessels are capable of, let's get to the scenario itself. So, for our purposes, we are going to say that a lone Galor-class cruiser, assigned to raid Federation merchant shipping, comes across a lone Miranda-class frigate. This ship detects the Galor and signals to the rest of the ships in its squadron, which come to its aid while the initial Miranda moves to engage the Galor. The Galor captain would rather run away, as he knows more Starfleet vessels are on their way. But he can't have an enemy follow him reporting his position the entire time, so he moves to engage the first Miranda, hoping to quickly knock it out before any other ships can catch up to him. This is where I would show maps of the battle as it takes place if I had the skills, but I don't, so please use your imaginations. Now, as has been said, a lone Miranda will be fairly easily destroyed by the Galor class, but whether it survives or not is up to how long it takes the rest of the squadron to arrive. Let's say that the Starfleet captain plays it safe, keeps his distance, or her distance, and doesn't try anything cute, and her Cardassian counterpart just tries to get distance between himself and the Starfleet ships. By the time the next Miranda arrives, let's call it Lindsay to keep with the theme, the original Miranda, hereafter referred to as simply Miranda, has taken some damage, but is in a generally fresh condition. The same goes for the Galor. The rest of the squadron is still a few minutes away, giving us a matchup now of Miranda and Lindsay versus the Galor. The two Starfleet ships attack the Galor one at a time from different angles, forcing the ship to split its fire and attention. The Cardassian still wants to run away above all else and isn't going to focus all its effort on destroying one or both Starfleet ships. The battle seesaws back and forth for a time. Miranda and Lindsay fire torpedo volleys in sequence, one diving in and being covered by the other before repeating. In turn, the Galor splits its weapons between the two vessels, trying to keep constant fire on both Starfleet ships to distract their aim and disrupt their firing angles. At some point, a torpedo hits home and the Galor is knocked out of warp with damaged coils. The ship now goes all into the fight, with all hope of retreat gone. The fight now becomes much more intense as the Galor charges down the teeth of Miranda and Lindsay, caution thrown to the wind. The two Starfleet ships now back off to their defense, trying to keep their distance and distract the Galor as the ship focuses on one of the two ships. Both sides land hits, and Miranda, already damaged, is struck by a spiral wave blast, which causes serious damage. Both sides are now evenly matched, with the Starfleet ships struggling to deal serious damage, but gradually whittling down the Galor's own defenses, while the Galor in turn is being wounded by pinprick attacks and gradually worn down, but is getting hits in. Miranda and Lindsay could charge the Galor, but would risk major damage to themselves, while the Galor is unable to focus solely upon one ship or the other. It's only when Samantha, a third Miranda, arrives that the battle turns. Now capable of further dividing the fire of the Galor, the three Starfleet ships begin to inflict serious damage. All three ships now charging the lone Cardassian at once, knowing it cannot possibly focus fire on one because that would risk taking lethal hits from the other two. The rest of the battle is short but hot. The Galor refuses to go down easy and leaves calls for its surrender unanswered. The Galor focuses what fire it can on the already damaged Miranda, eventually forcing its retreat out of range. With a parting torpedo strike, the ship leaves the Cardassian to Lindsay and Samantha. The two remaining ships smash into the Galor, sensing blood in the water. By the time the final Miranda arrives, the Galor now has major fires and hull breaches in multiple locations, and is reliant upon auxiliary power only. Lindsay and Samantha finish off the Galor just before the fourth Miranda arrives, the Cardassian ship broadcasting a final defiant message before her crew abandon ship. And there we have what I hope to be a plausible scenario which shows in stages how many Miranda-class ships are needed to take out a single Galor-class ship. In this case, 3, though 2 could have done it with difficulty, and 4 would have made the battle rather one-sided. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, go do all that random stuff that every YouTuber asks you to do. You know what I mean. Anyway, regardless of your thoughts on the video, have a good day and stay safe.